Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the God, whose kindness is immense, whose mercy is forever. I am going to talk about the religious differences, and this is the second part of it. I mentioned in my last clip the fact that religious differences within Islam, Muslims, are many. And they are, if you try to come up with their categories, they are big differences in matters which are serious. There are differences which are minor. The matters are not quite as significant. But the differences are many. You follow one point of view and you are going in a direction which is absolutely the very opposite of the direction that somebody else, some other groups are following. The obviously question is, why? And then the question is, what? Why are they there and what needs to be done about them? I answered the question why in my last clip, wherein I said that it's God's design and He wants to know who are the people who are sincere and who are not. If you are really sincere in finding out the truth, then given these differences and the scenario of confusion, diversity, you will, plunge into this whole mess with a sense of sincerity, commitment, earnestness, and struggle and find out what the truth is. That's what God wants you to do. And if you're not sincere, you will use these differences as an excuse to say that, I didn't know what the truth was. And the decision is yours. Today I will talk about what exactly should be done. What is the correct answer to a question where people dispute? I did mention in my last presentation that when it comes to the question of religious understanding, there's no doubt about the fact that there are people, let's face it, who know more than others. As a layperson, you have no choice but to go to somebody who is an expert, who is a scholar. If you want to make a house, you want to make a bridge, you want to make roads, you'll go to civil engineers. You want to get yourself cured from a disease, you'll go to the doctors. You'll not go to the doctors for getting a bridge erected, constructed. It would be disastrous. And you won't go to a civil engineer for getting your whatever ailment you have cured. Likewise, there are experts in the field of religion, those who have worked hard at it and have spent a part of their lifetime learning the Quran, the Hadith, and the opinions of scholars, etc. So, what should an individual do? The reason I'm asking this question is that had all scholars been saying the same thing about everything, this question won't have arisen. But as I said, that's not the case, and there are serious differences. You see, this question can only be answered if we know who the person is who is asking this question. The person could be a scholar, or the person asking this question could be a non-scholar, intelligent person who in the normal daily matters uses his intelligence to find out what is right from what is wrong, what is more desirable from what is less desirable. And there are non-scholars who, let's face it, are not intelligent. At least in some cases. When you talk about differences, they cannot make out anything. They get confused. They look at one point of view and they say, well, it seems right. They look at another point of view and they think that that's right too. So, they've got no clue, no way of finding out what the truth is. Each of these three categories, scholars, non-scholar intelligent people, non-scholar unintelligent people will have three different strategies for them respectively. A religious scholar who has done his research on the topic where he needs God's guidance will follow the understanding that he himself has honestly arrived at. He has no other choice. I mean, how is it possible that he comes to the understanding that as far as, let's say, law of inheritance is concerned, I can very clearly see that God Almighty has given this understanding. But you know what, because I am a Maliki or I am a Hanafi, therefore I will not follow what I understand from the Quran, I will follow my school of thought. That's simply not possible. It's not acceptable. So, a scholar will follow the understanding which he himself honestly believes is what God is saying, or God's messenger, may God's mercy be on him, said. However, we know that scholars, most scholars, probably all of them, have not been able to do enough adequate research in every area of Islamic learning. I think it's not humanly possible. So what should they do? Well, I think they should do exactly what a non-scholar, intelligent person ought to do. And what ought he to do? Well, an intelligent person is somebody who is not an expert in the field, is not a doctor, for example, and when there is a matter of serious ailment, disease that he is faced with, he talks to one doctor, one expert, and gets his opinion, and gets a second opinion and a third opinion, without being an expert, without knowing the details, the intricacies of medical science. He figures out that this third person is making more sense, and therefore I will get myself or my dear one cured by him rather than the other two. Likewise, in the case of religion, the person himself is not a scholar, but he can see that the scholars are giving their own respective arguments and they have their own way of describing religion. They have an attitude, and he feels that in an important matter that he's faced with, should he go for a mortgage or not, he listens to one person, one scholar, a second scholar, a third scholar. Well, he has a right to, probably he has a responsibility to ask them questions, counter questions, to satisfy himself. But at the end of the day, he will follow what he sincerely thinks is the right view, based on the strength of the religious arguments that a certain scholar has presented, which impresses him more than what the other scholars have said. He must follow the point of view which appeals to him to be more convincing, backed by more impressive religious arguments than others. In other matters, it may happen that the scholars see, for example, that he had followed in the case of mortgage is not quite as convincing in his religious arguments as, for instance, scholar A is in law of inheritance or anything else. So he has a duty, a religious obligation to follow scholar A without being biased about it. He has to honestly understand what the truth is. That's what he will do. You know, if he is a truth-seeking individual, Muslim, he will try to look at the contesting arguments as much as is possible. Obviously, it's not human possible to listen to everybody and read them. As much as is possible, he will listen to the points of view that he is receiving and follow what he thinks is more convincing. And in the process, he might actually be following different scholars in different matters of religious significance. He will continue to listen to others, and as and when he comes across a point of view which is making more sense and which convinces him that the earlier point of view that he was following was not quite as convincing, but was in fact wrong, He will follow the new point of view. How can he not? Because that's what the truth for him is now. So in other words, a non-scholar, intelligent person is going to continue to be open-minded and to continue to follow the truth whenever it comes to him, from wherever it comes to him. If he's not going to do it, he'll be like those biased Jews who decided that they're going to just follow their own point of view and not listen to anybody else. A Muslim who reads the Quran and is sincere to God's message will do nothing but follow this strategy. Scholars who've not done complete proper research in some areas will also adopt the same strategy. Probably they'll be in a better position to do it, that they will follow the arguments of those who they think are making more sense than others, until such time that they come across some other point of view which is making even more sense, and in the process they will keep their minds open. A non-scholar person who is not very intelligent, however, not as intellectually gifted as others are, has no choice but to follow one particular scholar or a group of scholars whose piety and scholarly expertise impress him. I mean, he feels comfortable. Why? Because, he has no choice. Because he doesn't understand what's going on. He looks at the different points of view and feels that all of them seem to be correct, or probably none of them seems to be correct, or whatever. So he's confused. Whenever different contesting points of view are presented with their arguments, he says, well, I'm getting a headache. I can't absorb them. So I think if it happens to him in all religious matters, well, I think then it's a matter of concern, but hopefully not. So in matters where he does not find himself in a position to decide as to which religious point of view is right and which is wrong, or which is more convincing and which is less convincing, well, he has a right to. He can be given the right to follow a certain scholar or group of scholars. But he must realize that it's something that he is being allowed because of his limitations, because he doesn't understand the strength of arguments. Therefore, he has no right whatsoever to blame other religious people for what they are doing and what they are following, because those other poor people are also following his strategy. They don't know what is right from what is wrong, because they are incapable of weighing the strengths of the contesting arguments. So he should humbly follow the point of view that his scholar is following and telling him, without blaming others for what they are following. When this strategy will be adopted, then I hope you will agree with me, there will be no sects in Islam amongst Muslims. And that's what the Almighty wants. He says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Believers, you hold fast to the rope of God. وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا. And do not break into sects and religious groups. Coming to the second question, what should we do as a collectivity? We are a group, we want to take one decision. The trouble is that there are different points of view, and only one view can get the status of the group's decision. Like, for instance, we live in Pakistan. By a vast majority, we are Muslims. We want to take decisions as to what ought to be our laws. Some laws that are going to be made will be religious in nature. Or let me put it this way, some laws are going to be made about which religion has already mentioned its verdict. And that verdict is relevant to the area where the law is to be decided legislated. Now, what should be done? What should people do when they are in a group where there are numbers of them and they have different views? The Quran gives a very clear understanding about it. In Surah Shura, Surah number 42, verse 38, the Almighty mentions that the principle is Amruhum Shura Bainahum. Their mutual consultation is their decision. That is, what they will decide as a consequence of their discussion is what the ultimate decision is going to be. What it means is that whenever there are going to be matters that Muslims will have to decide when they are a group, no one person will have the right to take a decision. The decisions are going to be based on mutual consultation, which really means that people will get the right to talk about their understanding and their point of view. Others will listen to them carefully, and all views, if possible, will have to be put across. If the entire group agrees that this is the decision, the job is done. However, if they disagree and there is no other way but to find out as to how many people are in favor of one point of view and how many on another, the view that is supported by the majority will have to be followed as the decision. If the minority view is followed, then this verse is getting its expectation will get violated. That is, Muslims, their decision is their mutual consultation. It actually demands that Muslims must consult themselves regarding matters that have got to do with their collective issues, interests, and when they decide, if they all come to one conclusion, that's their decision. When they disagree, then the majority decision is going to be implemented. The majority decision is not necessarily the right decision in the eyes of the Almighty ultimately, but that's the right decision as far as the solution to the practical problem is concerned. If it's a matter of a country, then the majority decision would become a law. However, that law can be questioned. Everybody will follow that law, but the law can be questioned. Those who do not agree with the decision taken will also have to follow the law, but they will also enjoy the right to criticize the law, to educate people regarding the fact that they believe that this law is wrong, it's against the Almighty's dictates, it's against what the Quran is saying. So a dialogue and a debate is continue to proceed. However, as long as the majority agrees that a certain point of view is correct, that point of view, according to the Almighty's expectations, will have to enjoy the status of the law of the land. That's what the Almighty says. The modern day democracy, our parliamentary democracy in Pakistan, has many problems. It needs to be improved and reformed. Rich people can actually get elected. Poor cannot even contest elections. There are problems in elections. The people exaggerate. They fool the masses. The elections are not fair. There is rigging. Sometimes money is used, and sometimes even worse, power is used by some very strong influences in our country. The democratic process is not implemented properly, and there are forces outside the system of democracy who ensure that their understanding gets implemented, and much more. All these problems need to be sorted out. All these problems need to be addressed, corrected, and reformed. And the basic problem is that there is something wrong in our morality. We have problems in our approach towards what is right from what is wrong. That needs to be addressed. However, all said and done, the fact of the matter is that our system of democracy, which has not come from the heavens, is one way of implementing God's will of Amruhum Shura Bainahum. Their disputes, their disagreements are sorted out on the basis of mutual consultation. So, no one can say that what is happening in Pakistan is un-Islamic. It's based on the Islamic principle of mutual consultation. No one individual or a small group of people can say that our version of Islam is correct and therefore it should be implemented. It is absolutely wrong. Therefore, those people who created problems in our society, they introduced terrorism in the name of Islam, claiming that what is happening in Pakistan is un-Islamic, and they are the ones who have got the right version of Islam. Their version of Islam, if in its individual issues, may sometimes be correct, but it would still not get implemented unless the majority of the people, the majority of the parliamentarians agree. If they want to reform this society, they will have to join in the system, the debate, and contribute their understanding, teach, preach, reform, and cause the majority of the people to be influenced by their point of view. So, what I've mentioned today is that there are problems of disagreements at the individual level and at the collective level. And I've mentioned the Islamic solution, the solution of the Quran that we understand regarding both levels of disagreements. I hope you will join me in the next lecture as well. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.